My name is Sarah Pritchett. I'm the lead horticulturist here at Good to Grow, and we're in the Good to Go greenhouse right now. This is Sawdust. She is our greenhouse rabbit, and she is who I try to prevent from eating everything that I grow. So she's going to be joining us for a little bit of the workshop too. And then also we have our technical support here. Mark, hop on over, babe. There you go. And I also want to give a big shout out to Sarah Crocker, who she is the program coordinator with Food First Newfoundland. And so she designed this presentation for us. And so Food First has a lot of awesome resources out there for growing and for educating and for doing things like this. So shout out to her. Thanks so much. Also, just a little housekeeping, a reminder, if you are interested in a leased bed, so having a bed of your own with the CBS Community Garden in the Gateway Garden, we are still accepting leased bed applications. So those applications can be submitted through email. Obviously, the town hall is closed right now. So right now we're accepting applications through email. And so our email address is cbscommunitygarden@gmail.com. Don't worry if you didn't get that down. I know it's not up on the screen right now. I will have it up on the screen in the very last slide. So if you're interested in applying for a bed of your own that you maintain in the Gateway Garden, then that is how you do it. And just keep that in the back of your mind, and you'll have the email again at the end of the presentation. So now we are good to start. So, what is seed saving? So, I'm sure that many of you may have that question, and that's why you're here tonight. So, seed saving is just the practice of saving seeds from year to year. This can include vegetables, herbs, grains, etc. I know I have all that up on the screen, but little did you know that saving tubers, corms, and bulbs also fall into seed saving, because you're saving the reproductive tissue of a plant so that you can replicate it again the next growing season. So a very common form of seed saving that you may be most familiar with, I know I was very familiar with this growing up, is potatoes. When you dig your potatoes in the fall, often you take some and you set them aside in the root cellar or wherever the potatoes get stored, and that is what you use for next year's planting. So you don't consume every potato of the year. I know some people buy fresh, and a lot of people do that because it's an option now, but when I was growing up, we would always just plant some from last year's crop, and we would inspect them and make sure that they were suitable, and that's how we would do it. So it's still seed saving, even though it's not technically a seed. It's just the reproductive tissue of that plant, and so then you plant that for the next year. Seed saving was the prominent method of producing seed for some thousands of years. It started in the Neolithic Revolution, when we stopped being hunter-gatherers and we started farming and growing our food instead of trying to find it. So seed saving has been something that we've done for hundreds of thousands of years. But since entering the 20th century with mass production, in order to feed the masses, seeds have largely been produced by seed companies rather than the farms themselves. And so today, mostly seed savers are not farms, but home gardeners or very small farms, but prominently home gardeners. So, next, why should you do this? Why save seeds when you can just buy them? Well, there's a number of different reasons. First of all, you can preserve or create plant diversity. So mass agriculture has aided in a loss of a lot of heirloom varieties of vegetables, which reduces access to a wider range of plants that may be adapted for different conditions or different needs. If the plant doesn't produce on par with the threshold that a company wants to meet, the crop is not useful for our modern mass agriculture. This has led to a significant loss in flavor, hardiness, and maybe some other traits that you might have in mind as a home gardener that you're looking for. One example of this is, have you ever compared side by side the flavor of a homegrown tomato to a store-bought tomato? The difference is astounding. It's incomparable that homegrown tomatoes, which are typically heirloom varieties or specific varieties that you're just interested in, they're not the varieties that huge mass agriculture produces. They produce a crop that's just going to produce a lot, and they don't really care about a whole lot of other things, for the most part. Generalization here. Another reason to save seeds would be to acclimate the plants for your conditions. So, as we all know, the climate is a huge challenge growing here in Newfoundland. But if we save seeds from the plants that do well here, regardless of the weather that we get, that's a plant that you want to keep, right? Because you want something that's going to feed you in our climate. So if we do that, then we can help build varieties that are genetically predisposed to thriving here in Newfoundland. Appreciation for nature, for the life cycles of the seasons, pollinator habitats, community resilience. You know, most of us are accustomed to allotting time for our crops to mature, but when you're saving seeds, those crops, they have a longer cycle that you have to follow. So you start paying more attention to how they're doing in seasons that you may not have paid attention to them otherwise. And you'll also start to see more beneficial pollinators around in the flowers and things like that. Maybe the dried stalks become homes for different bugs that will help improve your garden over time. And so you'll create a lot of diversity within your garden or farm or whatever. And not to mention, you'll almost always end up with more seed than you will ever use. So you share, naturally. You share with your neighbors and your friends and your community. So you build a community resilience for seeds around that. You lower your costs because you're not purchasing seeds all the time. Seeds are relatively cheap, but they can add up over time. If you're buying a pack of tomatoes and a pack of peppers and a pack of cucumbers and on and on and on, each pack of seeds may be anywhere from $2 to $5, but that cost adds up quite quickly. So if you can save seeds from even a small percentage of that, then you save, your costs quite quickly. You can also grow rare or unusual plants. And so this is a story that I love telling, so I'm sure that some of my friends who are following this will be sick of hearing it, but that's fine. I'm going to tell it anyway. So my personal favorite vegetable that I grow is a yellow wax bean. It's called beurre de Rocancourt. It tastes literally like butter when you eat it. It is delicious. I used to grow them when I was involved very briefly with the Rabbittown Community Garden in St. John's, but I couldn't find them anymore. They just used up a pack of seeds that day that we were planting them, and they happened to be the most delicious thing that I'd ever tasted, and then I could never find them again. It took me 6 years to track down that seed from a specific heritage seed company. And so when I did, obviously I bought as many packs as I could afford at the time, and now every year I make sure that I have some of those plants that I set aside that I actually don't harvest from. I just let them mature, and I save the seeds for myself. And now I will never run out of that bean again, and my freezer is full, and I'm happy. And then our cultural heritage. So perhaps we'll end up growing provincial or community-specific crops, which then becomes a fabric of your gardening community. Certain varieties may thrive where you live specifically. Newfoundland, we have a wide variety of people and climates. So something that thrives in Nunatsiavut may not thrive, or, something that thrives here may not thrive in Nunatsiavut. Something that thrives on the Northern Peninsula or in Corner Brook, where they tend to have deeper winters and things can overwinter there. They may not, we may not have something that does as well here. So you can end up with some really interesting cultural, community-driven varieties of things if people really want to get into this and share them with others, because it's our natural, I feel it's our natural instinct to share this with others. When we find something that's delicious or looks nice or we love for whatever reason, it's our natural instinct to share that with as many people as we can. And so we end up with a real cultural heritage around different plants that we grow. So, after that long-winded speech was over, next, what are seeds? This is something that I had not thought about before I heard Sarah Crocker give this presentation for the first time at one of the seed library launches. And it is a plant in a box with its lunch, which sounds sort of weird, but then when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. So the box is the seed coating on the outside. So each seed has a seed coating on the outside, which will protect the seed until it germinates. So some things, maybe your tomatoes and peppers that you grow, you just put them in soil and you cover them with water and you make sure they're warm and they're moist, and then they sprout. There are other things that are a little bit more difficult. So you may have to stratify them, so you may have to expose them to extreme hot or extreme cold temperatures for an extended period of time. You may have to scarify them. So some things may want to be nicked a little bit. They're built to go through a bird's reproductive, or not reproductive system, whoops. They're built to go through a bird's digestive system in nature. And so when they go through the digestive system, they're exposed to the acids and the different things that they ingest in their gullet. And so then they get scratched and then they get deposited somewhere, and that's when they germinate. So you may have to treat things in different ways. Typically, don't get worried. Typically, if it's something like that, it will say. It will tell you on your seed pack. You'll know in advance that it's something you need to do that with. So don't start doing it to all of your seeds, because not all of them need it. Back to what I was saying, the plant is inside that seed coat. So the plant, inside it, you have an embryo. The leaves, stems, roots, it's all inside that box. And the embryo is a living, undeveloped plant just waiting to come out of there. And the lunch, there's also some nutrients in there. That's why, for a lot of seeds that you start, you don't actually require any fertilizer or anything. They can get by for quite a long time, just pushing its roots through. They need food to do that, so it keeps its food inside the box with it, so that it can feed on something and push through the soil and come up and become a plant for you. So, next, we have some steps for seed saving. So some of these might seem quite obvious, but I like this graphic a lot because it explains the whole process. So you have to plant the seeds, obviously, and then you have to select which ones you want. So I know that in my garden, what I do is I'm usually looking for the plants that are the most vigorous. I want the plants that grow the quickest and strongest and seem like they start flowering first and produce very strong, healthy fruits or flowers for me, whatever that may be. Because in Newfoundland, where we grow, it's very important for me to have strong plants. So I select the strongest plants and I get rid of the weak ones. You have to be ruthless as a gardener. You have to be ruthless. So you get rid of the weak plants and save the strong ones and let those produce seed. So then, of course, you grow them. You mature them to the point where they do produce seed. And then, of course, you have to extract that seed as well as clean it. And then you have to make sure that it gets dry enough that it's not going to go moldy in its packaging. And then you pack it away. It's as simple as that, right? So, for beginner seed savers, your best bet is to start with easy crops. So, growing anything can have its challenges, but typically these are the easiest things to start with. So you would look for something that's an annual. So for something that you're going to grow this year, that is going to make its seed this year. So our tomatoes, our peppers will do this, peas, beans, some herbs. You also want them to be self-fertile. All those things I mentioned are also self-fertile. So both the male and female parts of the flower are contained within one flower. So it means that some of you may be familiar with your squash plants, where you have male and female flowers, and you have to go around and you have to pick your flowers and make sure the pollen gets on to each of the female flowers to make sure that you end up with fruit. And that's quite a lot of work sometimes. So you're going to want to make sure that it's something that you can focus on that's just going to produce seed. It's just going to produce a fruit, and that fruit is going to have seed no matter what. You also want something that's going to have a low chance of cross-fertilization. So, for example, something I will show you a bit later is mustard. I save mustard seeds because it's a very nice, easy winter green that I can grow. However, we have a lot of wild mustards that exist in Newfoundland, and I let a lot of my lawn just go to flower. I let it become weedy so that I attract in beneficial pollinators. There's a chance that a bee could visit one of the wild mustards, then visit my mustard seed, and then I will end up with a seed that's a cross between the both of it. You're not going to end up with that with your tomatoes and peppers and things like that. They pollinate themselves. It's very hard. You have to work at cross-pollinating them. Even insects don't cross-pollinate them. So you'll have a low chance of cross-pollination with those crops. So, like I said, peas, beans, tomatoes, peppers, and dill is what the picture is in the slides that you're looking at. And so dill is a great one. Dill sets seed on its own, and it's called dill weed for a reason. It will go everywhere that it's allowed to. I personally like that. There are a couple of crops I allow to do that in my yard. Cilantro, dill, parsley. I just let them do their thing, and then I don't have to worry about planting them all the time. But if you would like to plant them on purpose, those are easy crops to save seed from. So, next we have Botanical Basics. So anyone who knows me knows that I'm a stickler for proper names on plants versus common names, but there's a reason for that. I don't need to know that your cucumber is Cucumaris sativus. That's, you can just call it a cucumber. But if you are looking to save seed from your cucumber, it's best to know if your cucumber is an English cucumber versus a straight 8 cucumber, or the other pack we have there is Spartan Dawn F1 hybrid. So it's important to know what those are if you're going to try to save seed from them, so that you know what it is when you're going to plant it next year. You also want to know if the varieties will cross-pollinate them. And so if your cucumbers, your hybrid versus your open-pollinated, will cross-pollinate, then you may need to set an isolation distance. Or if you really love that specific variety of cucumber and it's an open-pollinated variety of cucumber, maybe you don't plant any more cucumber anywhere in your yard. You just plant that variety and lots of plants of that variety, so that when you save the seed from that and you plant it next year, that is the variety that you have. You don't have a cross, like I mentioned about my mustard. You don't have that happen. You also should know if they're annuals or biennials. So I mentioned that in my yard I save dill and cilantro and parsley. Parsley is a biennial. So parsley, I plant where I want it, I let it grow, I harvest it that year, and then I leave it. The next year it will come back again. However, that's the year that it will set seed. It needs to go through a cool period in order to set seed. So there are certain things, parsley is one of them, carrots, I believe beet and onions are another couple of things that are biennial. So if they're something that you really love and you're very invested in saving seed from, they are biennial. So you have to plan somewhere that you're going to have them in your garden for at least 2 seasons. And the next slide here is just a picture of some different varieties of cucumbers, and that's sort of why it's important for you to know which one it is, because we have a little salt and pepper cucumber there, we have quite a long English cucumber, we have a gherkin, we have, not sure what the other one is, but yeah, there's a few different varieties of cucumbers there, so it's pretty important for you to know what one it is that you are saving and therefore going to plant the next year. It's also important that your seeds are quality seeds, which is why I mentioned it's important to grow strong plants and save from strong plants. And that's outlined here. So the health of the parent plants. You want a strong, healthy plant. You don't want it infected by any diseases that could be around. There are some crop diseases that are seed-borne. So if the plant gets infected with a virus, then the virus can then continue and infect the plant that you grow from that seed the next year. We don't have a whole lot of those issues here in Newfoundland, but you just want to make sure, to be on the safe side, that you are saving seed from a healthy set of parent plants. You also need to know what the maturity of the plant is, and the size of the seeds is also important. So a smaller seed may produce a weaker plant than a larger seed. Again, the seed is in a box with its lunch. So the bigger the box, the bigger the lunch, the easier time you're going to have with that seed producing another healthy plant. Your storage conditions are also very important. Seeds do not like to be stored in damp or cold locations. They do need to be cool, but it cannot be damp. So you need to make sure that it stays dry and quite cool. I have a room in my house that's usually about 10 degrees all the time, and that's where I store some of my vegetables, my squash and things like that for the winter. That's also where I store my seeds. That's about the right temperature, and it's dry, and they don't rot, and they don't mold, and it's perfect for them. So something like that would be perfect. The seed quality is also measured by its viability and the vigor. So you want to know how much sprouts, how much germinates, and how quickly that germinates, but also how strong those seedlings are. I know something that's been happening to me lately is I had run out of fresh lettuce seed. So I was trying to start more lettuce, and I was using older seed. And I had a very low germination rate on it. But as well, the plants that did germinate were very weak. They were not ideal. So now I've learned that lettuce seed has to be fresh all the time, every time I use it. So moving right along. Oh, yes. I lost my place. So now we move into the 4 seasons. So your first season is spring. So when you are planning for your year, which is now-ish, you want to select specific varieties that you're interested in, that you like the flavor of, or that do well in your garden, and maybe they do well in your neighbor's garden, and so you'll try them this year. You want to start your seeds. Some things need to be started and transplanted because they need a longer season, so your tomatoes and peppers, which is what the tomatoes are actually the ones that are in the picture here. And then you also need to consider your garden layout, because you want to figure out how many plants you may need to get the desired amount of seed. So, for your tomato plants, maybe you just have 3 tomato plants to give you as many tomatoes as you want for the year, and you only need to save seed from maybe one of those tomatoes in order to have enough seed to plant next year. However, if you are doing something like radish, then radishes take up quite a lot of space, actually, when they start to flower. So you may need more or less plants, so you have to use that bit of planning. Your plant may also take longer to produce seeds than it does to produce the vegetable that you're accustomed to growing. So again, with the radish example, a radish usually takes about 6 weeks to grow fully matured, and then you consume it. However, for it to set seed, it takes quite a lot longer, and then it will take quite a lot longer for the seed to actually dry in the seed pod. So you need to plan for that. So as opposed to planning a space where your radishes are only going to be there for 6 weeks, you may have to plan a space where your radishes are going to be there for 12. And then the mature plants will take up a lot more space. So, you know, your radish only gets yay tall and this big around. Your radish, when it's producing seed and flowers, will be about this tall and about this big around. So you need to make sure that you allot for that space when you're planting your garden in the spring. And speaking of radishes, that's what our next slide is. So you can see just the small radishes that are there's some that are harvested and some that are still growing. And then you can see my friend Sarah Crocker, who did this up, she's sitting in the bed of radishes, and that's them flowering. So now you can see a little bit of a reference to see how big they get. She's not standing, she's sitting. They're not too tall here, but larger than you'd think they would get. And so then moving right along into our next season, which would be summer, if it ever comes. We will see. It always feels like it's never going to come, and it always does. I have to tell myself that. So in summer, you're growing for seed. So it may take longer, like I said, to produce seeds than it would for vegetables, but it's also very vital in this stage that you observe, you make notes, you rogue, which I'll get into in a second, and you use the best plants for seed saving. So it's important that you keep a garden notebook, or you take pictures on your phone and add notes in an app, or just have some consistent way to keep notes about the different plants that you're trying to save seed from. Record your observations all the time. Have a walk through your plants every day. That doesn't mean that you have to get out there and do actual work in there. They don't need harvesting every day. But make sure that you walk through your plants and you observe them, because sometimes diseases or viruses can happen overnight and your plant may get sick, and you know you don't want to save seeds from that anymore. So just make sure you check on them. Every day you have a look and you write down and you record what you've observed. Ideally, you'd like to keep seeds from plants or fruiting bodies that are representative of the traits that you desire. So, like I said, I typically go for the ones that mature the quickest, that produce the most, or maybe for tomatoes, they ripen the fastest, or they produce the most of it. Whatever your personal benchmark is, that's what you're looking for. So you remove off types. That's what roguing is. Roguing just means to remove types that don't have the traits that you're looking for. So whether that means that in terms of a radish, you just pull it and you eat it, or that means for a tomato plant, one is weaker than the other before you ever plant them outside, and so you just toss it. You just get rid of it. And so that moves us right along to the picture of the Moravsky Div tomatoes that we grew on the farm that I was working on one year. And it's just an example of an observation sheet. So this is a form that was available to people who were growing seed crops specifically for a program. But you can see that there's some information on it. So you're recording when the first flowers opened, when the first fruit set, that sort of stuff. So that one is because that program was looking for specific traits. However, whatever traits you're looking for, you could easily make up a form that looks similar and do it for yourself. So if you're looking for when the first flowers open, make sure that you record that when that happens. And then, this is my favorite part, in the fall, it's over and you harvest your seeds. So there's a few different methods. You can find a lot of these online. I'm not going to get right into how you cure them right now, because there's so many different ones. There's a great resource that I'm going to show you actually that I use for everything. So when it comes to seed saving, and it's this. There we go, we can see it. So,
Might be backwards.
Seed to Seed. Oh, it is backwards. Whoops. It's called Seed to Seed. And it is by Suzanne Ashworth. And literally the first dozen pages in it are explaining everything that I just went through. And then it also delves deep into the different methods of drying and harvesting your seed. So you'll need to separate the chaff from the rest of your seeds. So separating the chaff from the wheat is a common expression that I'm sure some of you have heard before. And that's what that means. That's where it comes from people separating the chaff, what you want to get rid of, your plant material that is no good to you anymore, and your seeds that you're trying to keep. You're also going to inspect your seeds for your seed quality. If there are any that look different than the others in a bad way, if they're off color, or if it looks like there may be any pests or anything that affected them, you won't be saving those. And so then you can also repurpose or use homemade equipment to do so. So some people may have shop vacs at home, and you can turn it on a blower setting, and you can use that to separate the chaff from the wheat. Or your seeds, doesn't have to be wheat, it can be any seeds you like, but separate the chaff out, and there are lots of formats online. I believe the St. John's Tool Library may actually have one that you can borrow. I could be wrong about that, that you can actually watch the seeds going through a plexiglass contraption, and you can watch all the chaff being removed from it. There's tons and tons of videos of all of this online. And then the other thing that you would need to do is a dryness test before you store them. So often it's called the thumbnail test. If you can push the seed between two thumbnails and it cracks instead of smushing, that is what you are looking for, because it means that it's dry. It's ready to go into storage. If it sort of smushes instead of cracking, it means that it still needs to cure. And if you put that away, that seed may rot. And then, in the winter, for storing your seeds, you need to label with the variety name and preferably the harvest date. This is something that I've just realized that we don't have on any of the bags of seeds here that I'm going to show you later. I'm pretty sure all of it was last year. Yeah. And that is why, on my sheet, I have label everything in caps twice. Because you need to label everything all the time. The ideal conditions for storing your seed, I know I mentioned it earlier, are cool, dry, dark, and safe. So the room that I mentioned, it's the top floor of the house, so it's never going to flood or anything like that. It's cool, it's about 10 degrees. It's dry because it's in my house. And it's dark. There's only one window, and have it with blackout blinds on it so that nothing in there gets any light. And that's perfect for seeds. They're very happy in that environment. You also want to do a germination test from time to time. So whether that's in the spring when you're looking at using them, or if it's just something you're looking at doing over the winter to test it out, you can put, say, 10 seeds in a paper towel, wet it, and see how many sprout. And so if 7 out of 10 seeds sprout, you have a 70% germination rate on those seeds. You also have to randomize it, so you can't take the seeds that you think look best. You just shake it up, you take out a handful of seeds, you count how many there are, and however many germinate, you just divide that by your starting number, and that's your germination rate. So there's also a few activities that you can do, and the instructions that I have there are for making your own DIY seed packet. So if that's something that you'd like to do at home, please just let us know. We're going to have a little Q&A after this. So please just let us know, and I'm sure that I can send out that image so that people can follow that. You can also clean seeds pretty much all winter, as long as it's something that you've dried properly. You can spend all winter doing that. I'm going to show you my mustard in a few minutes, and yeah, we still have to clean some of them. So that's a nice winter thing to do, sitting in front of the wood stove. You can also make seed balls. So some people call them seed bombs. So you take the seeds that you like and you compress them with some clay and I think that it's flour and stuff. You make sort of a paper mache sort of thing out of it. And then you toss them wherever you want. And then seeds everywhere. Seeds for everyone. I think someone did that in Mount Pearl one year when I was working with Murray's, because I kept having to pick radishes out of the planters that were in the middle of the city. So, yeah, thanks whoever that was. So we're almost at the end here. So just some resources that I have listed here. Both St. John's and Harbor Grace have seed libraries. So you're not expected to return the seeds, but you can go in and you can take advantage of the seed saving and just plant growing resources they have there. Obviously, it's no cost to you for a library membership or anything like that. So if you maybe are low income and you can't afford seeds, or you're not sure if you really want to make that type of investment into gardening and things like that, because as I said, the cost of seeds can add up, then feel free to take advantage of that. Go and rent your seeds and plant them this year, see how they do. And yeah, so we have 2 of those, one in St. John's, one in Harbor Grace. I am trying to start one here at the CBS library, but obviously that's on hold right now. And as well, don't forget to support local seeds. So Gaze Seed, which is now called The Seed Company, downtown Water Street, they do stock a very small variety of actual local seeds. Other than that, all of the seed packs that have The Seed Company written on them, they're from Atlantic Canada. So at the very least, you get something that's a little closer to our environment, which is great. Better than getting something from Texas, where they have a completely different climate, and so may not do as well here. You could also host seed swaps or exchanges. That was what we were supposed to be doing tonight with the community garden. So obviously we're not doing that now, but we're able to do this online with everyone. And we're definitely going to have a seed swap at some point when we're all allowed outside again. And yeah, so we're looking at doing things like that, and anyone can do that. Just reach out to your community, reach out to the other gardeners that you know, reach out to people you know who are interested in gardening at all, and offer to give them seeds. They don't even have to give you any back. If you have excess, just give freely. And you can also contact Food First NL, because they helped us tonight with the workshop materials. They have e-news that they send out every month. I'm on their email list, and they do so much good for this province. It is unbelievable. And so yeah, check them out too and take advantage of every resource that they have available. And so some other organizations that exist are Seeds of Diversity. They are a great website that you can order seeds from. There's also Seed Change. So they have a hashtag on Twitter, I'm a seed saver, and then I have the website there for that as well. And also recently, I think about 4 years ago, they formed a PEI Seed Alliance. Some farmers in PEI did too. So I've gotten some seeds from them, and they're amazing. And they are a bunch of small local farmers who really wanted to bring seeds and make it local. So they have a lot of heirloom varieties and really interesting things happening. So you can check out that website as well. This whole thing will be recorded, and I will upload all of those sites to the Facebook group when we're done. And if anyone is not on our Facebook group and would like to know this information, just let us know over email, and I'll send it out to you. No problem. So, and that's it for us. So keep in touch. We have our Facebook, which is the CBS Community Garden. We're on Instagram at CBS Community Garden, and we have our email again. So if just another shout out, if you're interested in the raised beds, the leased raised beds, then please send in your applications to us. We currently have 15 beds available. If more applications than that come in, then we will be holding a lottery. So we will draw names, and whoever wins their bed. So yeah, please get those into us as soon as possible. The deadline was April 1st. I think that we pushed it to April 22nd. Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was the 27th.
Okay.
So in 2 days, and we've extended it by, I think 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I think so. I think we've extended by 2 weeks. Anyway, there's time. Get your applications
in. There's time.
And last but not least, there's a little quote from my absolute favorite gardener in the entire world, Monty Don. He runs Gardener's World on BBC, and he is a wealth of wisdom and positivity. And so by having a direct stake and involvement with the process of plants growing, of having your hands in the soil and tending it carefully and with love, your world and everyone else's world too becomes a better place. And that's what we're all about these days. So I can take some questions now, I think, before we go in, and I can show people what the mustard and what all that stuff looks like. You want to see if there's any questions there, my darling?
Yeah, so we've got one here.
Okay.
From Julia.
Okay.
That asks, are all beans self-fertile?
Yes, I believe so. I believe all beans are self-fertile. You will want to keep an eye on the seed packet for that. So if it says that it's open pollinated, it will still be self-fertile, but it could also accept pollen from other plants as well. So that's when you would want to set up your distancing. So there are, in the book that I mentioned, Seed to Seed, again, it's a seed Bible, that will have in it all of the instructions for distancing for those things, because I don't remember off the top of my head how far apart you need to have beans in order to save the seed from them and to not risk cross-pollination. I think that should answer that.
Sure. Amanda asks, I want to start some seeds in my garage under grow lights.
Yep.
But I am worried it is too cold this time of year. Is it?
If the garage is unheated, it may be too cold for certain things. You can pick up, there are these small, we have them here at Good to Grow, but I know you can pick them up at Canadian Tire and stuff like that too. They call them a greenhouse, but it's not something that should ever go outside here. It's just like a plastic, it's a metal frame with a plastic covering over it. Yeah, like a clear covering.
Poly covering.
Poly covering, and it's got some shelves on it, so you can always set up your seeds and your grow lights in there with that, and that will, every layer that you adds a zone. So even if your garage goes down to, say, 10 degrees at night, if you keep it inside that domed structure, then that may only get down to, say, like 12 or 13 degrees. Some things would not be happy germinating in that, so I would not put tomatoes or peppers or anything in it, but your brassicas would do well, so your broccoli, cauliflower, anything like that you wanted to start out. It is too early to start those from seed, but when we get to that point, that they would be perfectly happy in there with some grow lights.
Create a little micro environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inside of one of those tents.
Yeah.
All right. Stephen asks, are there foods that we purchase from local farmers markets that we should be saving seeds from?
You can if you want. Like, if you buy a tomato at the farmer's market and you think, oh my god, this is the best tomato I've ever eaten, save seed from it. See if it works. I mean, you can always just ask the farmer what variety it is. I don't know that there's any farmer at a farmer's market that doesn't know what varieties it is that they're growing. So you could always ask them. But yeah, like if you eat something that's delicious that has seeds in it at the farmer's market, save seed from it for sure and plant it.
All right. Sarah here asks, can you save seed from grocery store produce like peppers, tomatoes? So I guess, is there a difference between grocery store and farmer's market vegetables?
There is. Grocery store, so first, to answer the first part of your question, it's not quite as cut and dry as the other, but yes, you can save seeds from that. That's an interesting little project that you can do, no sweat. That being said, where we do have a difficult climate, your best bet is to save seeds from, like Stephen said, from a farmer's market tomato or pepper, etc., than a grocery store one, because the grocery store ones, the seeds could still work perfectly fine, but they may not be adapted to our conditions. Those fruits may be producing in, say, 105 days, and our season is only like 90-something. So they may not be something that will mature properly or quickly for our climate, but it's an interesting project to do. So go ahead and do it if you want to. It will work. It just may not be entirely suited to our conditions. But yeah, it's still something that you can do. There's no problem. You'll still grow a plant, and it may produce something.
All right. We have a question from Weemish.
Okay.
Asks, I know garlic should be planted in the fall, but if I stuck a bulb in a pot in the garage, would that work? maybe not for a fall harvest, but to maybe then transplant in the fall from the pot?
I think that that could probably work because your garage is very likely cool, and really the biggest reason why garlic needs to be planted in the fall to then be harvested the next fall is not only that it needs that long to mature, but it's also a vegetable that needs to go through a cold period in order to induce it to produce a bulb. So I can see that that theoretically could work. I don't see why it wouldn't be worth a try. I'd go ahead and try it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that looks like all of the questions. He
Okay.
or she says thanks.
Okay, no problem. You're welcome.
All right. So
Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to show you just a couple little things. Oh, before we go to the microscope, I want to do this. So I had mentioned earlier that saving tubers or bulbs or corms is one way that you can do things. So unfortunately, I don't have any vegetables that I can show this with, but I did bring some gladiolus bulbs that I saved last year. So I'm going to show what I did with those. So this is just a shoebox. Let me see, am I in there? There we go. So this is just a shoebox that I put perlite into, which is just like a heated expanded stone. And you can see that there's a bunch of things in here. I'll show you a bit closer. These are gladiolus corms, technically. And you can see here, there we go, that this is very healthy. It's doing well. It's nice and tough, like I'm squeezing it and there's no give to it, so it's nice and hard. So I'll plant this again when spring comes, and then I'll get some beautiful flowers out of it. And you can sort of see a little bit that there's a tiny one right here. If I move it down, is there more light? Can you see that on the screen?
Kind of.
So there's a little tiny
Definitely.
bulb on the
A little white
side.
spot.
That will be a second plant. So in the spring, I'll pluck that off and I'll plant that on its own, and that'll produce a little flower, and then it'll get bigger and bigger as the years go by. And you can see that I also have some here that produced quite a lot. You can see there's 3 in 1 here. So this was 1 that I planted last year, and it produced 3 while it was growing over the season. So now I have more flowers. So that is another reason to save your own, to not just let this stuff die in the ground, because now I don't have to purchase them again, and I'm going to have more of them than I did last year. So that is how to save and I kept it somewhere dry, so I did keep that downstairs, not upstairs in the dry room that I told you about, because it needed to be a little bit warmer. But now that it's completely cured and dry, I will put it upstairs in that room that's dry, dark, and at about 10 degrees. So now we can go to the microscope, and I'm going to show you, this is my mustard seed. There we go. Okay. So, woo, too far. So there we go. This is my mustard seed. You can see here that there's a little seam along the side. No.
Anyway.
There you go. There we go. There's a little seam along the side. It's this one. No. This one. There we go. So if I crack that open, sorry guys, I have to do things backwards. You can see all that seed in there, right? So if I slowly take that out, you can see the seeds just popping everywhere. There we go. There we go.
You can get a second view there.
Okay. And you can see those little seeds in there. Yeah. So, if I open this, those seeds will come out. So, I have now done this by hand. This is one difficult method of separating the seed from the chaff. So what's left over, this little bit that I'm sort of poking around here, that's empty now. That's useless to me. I don't need it anymore. That can go in the compost. However, what's left here is my seed. And if you have a look, nope, that's not the right spot. Okay, so I gotta move it down. Down, here we go. I got it. Okay, so if I move this down, now you can see those seeds there. So, I'm going to use this pen. Thank you, sweetie. I'm going to use this one, actually. And you can see that this one here, that one's smaller than the others. That one, I do not want to keep, because that one, it's slightly purple. It's a little bit lighter than the others are. That one is misshapen, it's small, it may not even have an embryo in it, like I said, so it may not produce anything when I go to plant it. So I'll just get rid of that one. But the other ones are nice and uniform. They're all about the same size, shape, color. I'm going to keep all of those, because those will probably all be viable. I mean, there's always the chance that they're not. However, because they all look similarly, I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're fine. So, I'm going to save those. I'm going to get rid of the other one. And then this is going to be the mustard greens that I plant. Cool. And you can see I have a whole bag of that here. So you can see that it sort of just looks all like nothing really right
Take
now.
out your hand.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. You can see that some of them, here we go, have some seeds left in them, but most of this is garbage. So if I shake it up in this paper bag, then you can hear the seed rattling at the bottom. The seed is heavier, so the seed has sunk to the bottom. If I wanted to save time, because there's so many seeds in this bag, mustard seed. If I wanted to save time, because there's so many seeds in this bag, I could probably just haul out handfuls of this and just toss all of this, because the few seeds that I would lose are probably worth it for the time and effort that I would put into it. And then I could just save all the seed that's in the bottom. Another thing that we save seeds from is sunflowers. So you can see here that I have a sunflower head from last year's sunflowers. And each of these here is your sunflower seed.
So,
Yeah. Nope. Keep missing the microscope camera. There you go. So, little sunflower seed. So, this one passes the thumbnail test because it'll crack here. If I can get it open. You might be better at this. Oh no, wait, no, I got it. And then inside here, so this would be the seed coat of the seed. And in there, that is actually your sunflower seed in there. So when you buy sunflower seeds to plant, you do just see this seed coat on the outside, but luckily, with just adding water to it, it softens it enough that that seed in the inside can just germinate and come out. Well, there's nothing you need to worry about. This one, however, you can see that it looks a little strange. It looks maybe a little... Oh, thanks. So it looks a little misshapen and looks like it possibly got moldy. We have very wet falls, so it's difficult to save seed from certain things because then they get quite wet. So it's possible that some of the seeds that are in this sunflower are actually not viable. So we'll probably just go through and do our thumbnail test for all of them. And if they're soft, then we probably won't plant those. This one was a little bit soft. Okay, cool. So I think that's about it.
We had
for
another
now.
question here
Okay,
online,
yeah.
maybe before you go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
Another one about garlic bulbs,
Mhm.
and they asked if they could plant in the spring. Trina asked.
You could plant in the spring, but I wouldn't advise it. They do need to go through a cold period, so I don't know if it would be possible to like start it in a 1-gallon pot or something and put it somewhere cool for now and then transplant it out in the spring. But it would be a lot of work, so I would probably just skip and wait until next year.
Yeah. So I think there are...
I mean, try it. Try everything once. You know what I mean? Try it anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm after hearing of some regions that are able to grow short-season garlic.
Yeah, you may need a specific variety to that.
Varieties.
The majority of the varieties we have here are bred to hold up to our winters. So places that are quite southern, obviously they can still grow garlic. You know, they were growing garlic in Costa Rica when we were there. But I don't think that it's music. I don't think it's the music variety of garlic.
All right, and any tips for propagating hydrangea from cuttings?
Take a green cutting. So you want something that's not flowering, that has a few leaves on it, and then you're gonna... So you're looking for a branch. Hey, I can show you with this, actually. This is lavender. Here we go. So, hydrangea is going to be similar to lavender. Down here, you may be able to see that there's the brown wooden stem, because it's slowly going to become trunk-like. However, all of these green tips, you can take a cutting from. So hydrangea would be very similar. You're going to watch for it to start to sprout some nodes on it, and you're going to watch for it to sprout some branches here, and you're going to take a green cutting, and then you're just going to take that and stick it in some really loose compost, or something that's been amended with perlite or something like that, and keep it somewhere warm and very moist. So you're going to put it somewhere that it gets a lot of light, probably not direct light, so I wouldn't stick it directly under a grow light or anything like that. And then you're going to keep a plastic bag around it or a humidity dome or something like that. You want the humidity to be at 100%. Also, hydrangea has quite large leaves, unlike lavender. So what I would do is I would take each leaf and I would just cut it in half, so that you're not losing any moisture, and you're also not having a branch that is trying to power the leaves, and that's also why you want to avoid anything that has a flowering node on it, because if a flower is going to produce, your branch is going to try to put power into that, put nutrients into that flower as opposed to the roots. I would also advise to use rooting hormone. I use rooting hormone for most of the cuttings that I do because it works very well. You can get rooting hormone pretty much anywhere. We have it here at Good to Grow, but you can get it anywhere that's close to you. Any sort of garden center space should have rooting hormone as well.
I just got another question in.
Yep.
Hot off the press from Rick here. How do you keep your chickens out of beds that need to be set early, like onion or garlic from the previous fall?
You wire them in. So you either have to create a run specifically for the chickens that you move around, or you have to fence in your beds. Those are really the only two options. Chickens can't really be trained like that. If they see something they want to eat, they're going to eat it. But yeah, so I know that one of my friends, and something that we've thought about a lot, is actually making a wire-covered run that runs through your beds so the chickens can keep that weed-free and they can eat the bugs that are in between it and stuff like that. But they can't actually get into the beds. So yeah, you can look up different styles of run, and that would be one of them that pops up, I'm sure. But yeah, for anything you need to plant early or leave in, you need to have covered or wired to keep the chickens out of it.
That's it.
Cool. Okay, that's it. So if anyone has any other questions, I'm just going to lift this up because I'm sick of bending over. Right. If anyone, that's okay.
I'll just step straight, yeah.
Cool. So if anyone has any other questions, or if there's anything that we missed, send us an email, connect with us on Facebook or Instagram or Carrier Pigeon or Smoke Signal or whatever you want to do, and we'll try and get back to you as promptly as we can. I think the majority of us are either working from home or, like myself, laid off now, so we should be able to get back to you pretty quickly. And yeah, happy growing. Oh, and we have lots of peas and beans. We have tons and tons. One of our town councilors here in CBS, Christine Butler, very generously gave us so many seeds. I can't even begin to explain how many seeds there are. And so we're completely happy to give you seeds if there's something that you're looking for. So I know we have lots and lots, like hundreds of peas and beans. That was something I was just going to give out tonight if we did this in person. When we're all allowed out again, then I'm more than happy to arrange for people to come by and pick some up, or at one of our other functions. And so, yeah, other than that, get in touch with us however you want.
Happy birthday, Adam.
Happy birthday, Adam.
Adam and Sarah.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, Adam. Okay. All right, everybody. I hope that you're staying safe and warm and cozy, and I hope that this lifted your spirits tonight and got you thinking about gardening for the summer and all the good things to come. So, yeah, get in touch with us if you need anything, and thanks so much, everyone.